She had crossed an ocean for love. That was the first thing. The second thing was that nobody in that estate had asked her to come. The moment those doors opened, and his mother's eyes swept over her, slow and deliberate, the way you look at something you have already decided does not belong, Zara understood exactly what kind of week this was going to be. She did not run. That is what made her different. His name was Kang Min-ho, chairman of Kang Industries, a man whose shipping empire stretched across every major port from Busan to Rotterdam, a man who had survived hostile takeovers, government pressure, and rivals who played dirty and still walked away losing, a man who made seasoned executives straighten their spines without knowing why. But standing in that cold marble foyer, watching his mother look through the woman he loved like she was made of air, Kang Min-ho felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Helpless. And Zara, warm, beautiful, quietly unbreakable Zara, with her box braids and her jade pendant and the kind of dignity that does not ask for anyone's permission, stood right there beside him and did not flinch. Not once. But here is what nobody tells you about walking into a war you did not start. The most dangerous thing in the room is rarely the one looking you in the eye. Sometimes it is buried deep in the walls of the house itself. And sometimes, the woman who broke his heart 5 years ago walks back through that same front door wearing a smile that says she already knows exactly how this ends. Welcome to Story World Besties. Please like, share, and subscribe. And let's get into it. Zara had crossed an ocean for this. Kang Min-ho stood 3 feet away, hands in his coat pockets, watching her the way he always did, like she was the only steady thing in a room full of moving parts. Seoul in late autumn smelled like roasted chestnuts and cold stone, and the airport arrivals hall buzzed with reunions that were not theirs. "You're doing the thing," he said quietly. "What thing?" "The thing where you grip something so hard your knuckles go pale because you're terrified and too proud to say it." She exhaled. He always saw through her. That was the problem with loving a man like Min-ho. Nothing stayed hidden from him, not her fear, not her hope, not the small ache she carried about meeting his family for the first time. He was the head of Kang Industries, a shipping and logistics empire that touched half the ports in Asia, a man whose name made grown executives straighten their ties. But here, in this terminal, he was just a man trying to convince the woman he loved that his world wouldn't swallow her whole. He reached for her hand. She let him take it, and something in her chest loosened just slightly. The car ride to his family's estate took 40 minutes, and Min-ho spent most of it watching her instead of the road outside, until his driver cleared his throat twice. The estate itself rose out of the hillside like something carved rather than built, white stone and dark wood, a koi pond glittering near the entrance. "It's beautiful," Zara whispered. "It's cold," Min-ho said, "like most things in my family." He squeezed her hand. "You are not cold, Zara. Remember that when you're standing inside it." She didn't fully understand what he meant until the front doors opened, and a woman stepped out, silver-streaked hair pulled into a severe knot, eyes that swept over Zara once, top to bottom, the way someone inspects a delivery they didn't order. "Mother," Min-ho said, his voice flattening into something formal, distant. "This is Zara." Madame Kang Soo-yeon did not extend her hand. "So this is her." The silence that followed lasted only a few seconds, but Zara felt every one of them land like small stones. Dinner was a production of porcelain and silence. Zara sat across from Min-ho's mother while his father, a quiet man with tired eyes named Kang Tae-sung, picked at his food without looking up. Min-ho's hand found Zara's knee under the table, a small anchor. "You're American," Soo-yeon said, not a question. "I am from Atlanta." "And your family does what exactly?" "My mother teaches high school. My father passed when I was young." Zara kept her voice level though her pulse hammered. Soo-yeon's mouth curved, not quite a smile. "I see." Min-ho's jaw tightened. "Mother." "I'm only asking questions, Min-ho." She's the one bringing herself into this family. I should be allowed to know who she is. You know who she is. She is the woman I love. The word love landed in the room like a dropped glass. T-Sung looked up for the first time all evening, something unreadable passing behind his eyes, something that looked almost like fear. Later that night, Zara stood on the balcony of the guest room, arms wrapped around herself against the cold, when Min-ho found her. "I'm sorry about my mother," he said, leaning against the railing beside her. "She doesn't think I belong here. She thinks no one belongs here except the people she already approved of before they were born." He turned to face her fully. "I don't care what she thinks, Zara. I care what you think. Are you all right?" "I'm scared," she admitted, the words slipping out before she could catch them. "Not of her. Of losing the version of you that exists when we're alone. The one who isn't performing for anyone." Min-ho stepped closer, tilting her chin up gently. "That version of me only exists because of you. It doesn't disappear because my mother is unkind. It just goes quiet for a while. It always comes back to you." The wind picked up, cold and sharp, but neither of them moved away from each other. The next morning, Zara woke to find a note slipped under her door in elegant handwriting that was not Min-ho's. It requested her presence in the garden at 9, alone, signed simply, Soo-yeon. She found the older woman seated on a stone bench beside the koi pond, a cup of tea steaming in her hands, another waiting untouched on the bench beside her. "Sit," Soo-yeon said. Zara sat. "You should know something about my son before you go any further with him," Soo-yeon said, eyes fixed on the water. "He was engaged once. A woman named Han Yurin, daughter of a business partner. It was arranged, sensible, expected. He never mentioned her. He wouldn't. She broke it off 3 weeks before the wedding when a rival company offered her family a better deal. My son did not speak for 2 months after that. He stopped eating properly. He nearly destroyed himself trying to understand what he had done wrong." Soo-yeon finally looked at her. "I am telling you this not to frighten you, though perhaps it should. I am telling you because I watched that boy rebuild himself stone by stone. And I will not watch a foreign girl with no name and no fortune walk in and undo a decade of healing because it was convenient for her." Zara's throat tightened, but she held the older woman's gaze. "I'm not her, and I'm not leaving. Everyone says that in the beginning. Then I suppose you'll have to watch and see whether I'm telling the truth." Zara stood, smoothing her skirt. "I didn't come here to take anything from your son, Madam Kang. I came because he asked me to, and because I love him enough to sit through a conversation that was clearly designed to make me cry. I'm not going to give you that." She walked away before her voice could betray her, and behind her, Soo-yeon sat very still, something flickering across her composed face that almost looked like respect. That afternoon, Min-ho took her through the city, away from the estate's heavy silence. They walked through Bukshan's narrow hanok streets, ate street food from paper cups, and for a few hours, Seoul belonged only to them. He bought her a small jade pendant from a shop tucked between 2 tea houses, fastening it around her neck himself, fingers brushing the back of her neck longer than necessary. "My grandmother used to say jade protects the people who deserve protecting," he murmured. "And what if I don't need protecting? Then it'll just remind you that you're loved. That's enough of a job for one stone." She laughed, the sound easing something tight in her chest that had been there since the dinner table the night before. And for a moment, watching her laugh against the backdrop of lantern light, Min-ho felt something settle in him that had been restless for years. By evening, the warmth from the afternoon had cracked apart. They returned to find T-Sung waiting in the study, door closed, voice low and urgent through the wood when Min-ho stepped inside. Zara caught only fragments through the hallway. Words like obligation and debt, and the name Han Yurin again, spoken not as a memory this time but as a present-tense problem. Min-ho emerged 20 minutes later, his face drained of color. "What happened?" Zara asked. Nothing, he said too quickly. And she knew, with the particular certainty of someone who had learned to read a man's silences, that it was very much something. The following morning, the truth arrived wearing an expensive coat and a confident smile. Han Yurin walked into the estate's main hall as though she had never left it, trailed by 2 assistants and the unmistakable energy of someone who believed she had already won whatever game was about to be played. Min-ho, she said warmly, as if 5 years apart meant nothing. You look wonderful. Min-ho's posture went rigid. Yurin, what are you doing here? Your father invited me. Her eyes slid to Zara, assessing, amused. And who is this? Zara, Min-ho said firmly, stepping slightly in front of her, a small, instinctive act of shielding that Zara felt more than saw. My girlfriend. Girlfriend. Yurin repeated the word like it tasted strange in her mouth. How sweet. Suyeon appeared at the top of the staircase, and for the first time since Zara had arrived, the older woman looked almost pleased. Yurin's family is reopening discussions about the eastern shipping routes, Taesung explained later, when Min-ho confronted him in the study, voice low and furious. It would be foolish to let old wounds interfere with new opportunities. You invited my ex-fiancée into my home, while my girlfriend is staying under this roof. I invited a business partner's daughter. What she once was to you is irrelevant to the deal. It is entirely relevant, Min-ho said, because you knew exactly what you were doing. Taesung's face hardened into something Zara had not yet seen, something that explained, perhaps, where Min-ho's coldness in boardrooms came from. The company needs this partnership, Min-ho. Your personal feelings cannot dictate the survival of everything our family has built. I would think you, of all people, would understand the weight of responsibility. I understand it perfectly. I simply refuse to let it cost me the one thing I actually want. That evening, Yurin found Zara alone on the terrace, 2 glasses of wine in hand, offering one without asking if it was wanted. You should leave, Yurin said pleasantly, as if discussing the weather. Not out of cruelty, out of mercy. This family will eat you alive piece by piece until there's nothing left of whoever you were before you arrived. I know because I watched it happen to myself. Then why are you here trying to get him back? Yurin's smile didn't waver. Because some people are worth being eaten alive for. I made the mistake of leaving before I understood that. I don't intend to make it twice. She set the untouched glass down. He'll forgive me eventually. He always does. He's loyal to a fault, that one. It's his greatest weakness. Zara watched her walk away, jade pendant cool against her collarbone, and felt, for the first time since landing in Seoul, the unmistakable chill of a war she hadn't asked to fight. The next 2 days passed in a careful, exhausting choreography. Yurin appeared at every meal, every outing Taesung arranged, threading herself into conversations with practiced ease, referencing old memories that Zara had no claim to. Min-ho stayed close to Zara's side, his jaw perpetually tight, his patience visibly fraying. She's not subtle, Zara said one night, after Yurin had spent an entire dinner recounting a trip to Jeju Island she and Min-ho had taken years before. She's never been subtle, it's not in her nature. Min-ho rubbed his temples. I'm sorry, I should have warned you my father was capable of this. You couldn't have known. I should have known, he's done worse for less important deals. He looked at her, something raw breaking through his usual composure. I need you to know that nothing she says changes anything. I don't love her. I haven't for years. What I feel for you isn't even the same category of feeling. I believe you, Zara said, and meant it, though the constant presence of Yurin's perfect smile had started carving small fractures of doubt anyway, the kind that didn't announce themselves loudly but simply accumulated, quiet and persistent, like sediment. 3 nights later, everything came apart at once. Zara couldn't sleep. She wandered down to the estate's library near midnight, intending to find something to read, and found instead Taesung sitting alone in the dark with a bottle of soju half-finished beside him. "You should go to bed," he said, not looking up. "I couldn't sleep." "Neither could I sit, if you'd like. I find I owe you an apology I'm too proud to give properly." She sat across from him, cautious. "I was not always like this," Taesung said, voice thick. "Cold, calculating. I built this company from nothing, do you know that? My father was a fisherman. I slept on cargo ships for 3 years before I owned one. Everything I have I built with my own hands, and everything I built for Min-ho, so that he would never know the hunger I knew." He finally looked at her. "But somewhere in building his future, I forgot to ask him what he actually wanted. I am asking you to forgive an old man for confusing protection with control. They feel the same from the inside. They look very different from where you're sitting. Why are you telling me this and not him?" "Because he won't listen to me right now. Perhaps he'll listen to you." Taesung's eyes were wet, unguarded for the first time. "Yurin's family discovered a discrepancy in our Eastern shipping contracts last year, a discrepancy I created trying to protect us from a hostile buyout. If her family walks away from this partnership angry, they could expose it publicly. It would destroy everything. I thought, if Min-ho reconsidered her, the families would be tied together, the danger would dissolve." His voice cracked. "I was wrong to use my own son like a transaction. I see that now, watching you sit here asking me why instead of asking me how you could help." Before Zara could respond, the library door opened, and Min-ho stood in the frame, having heard enough of the conversation to understand exactly what his father had done. "You used a hidden financial crime to manufacture a reason for me to marry Yurin," Min-ho said, voice deadly quiet. "You endangered the entire company to manipulate my personal life." "Min-ho." "Don't." Min-ho's hands trembled, the only outward sign of the storm building beneath his control. "I need air." He left without looking at either of them, and Zara rose to follow, but Taesung caught her wrist gently. "Let him breathe first, then go to him. He listens to you in ways he stopped listening to me years ago." She found him an hour later on the same balcony where they stood the first night, hands braced against the railing, shoulders rigid against the cold. "He used me," Min-ho said without turning. "My entire life, every decision, every relationship, all of it has been a transaction to him. I thought bringing you here would finally show him something real existed outside his ledgers. Instead, he tried to bury it." "He's afraid," Zara said quietly, coming to stand beside him. "Afraid the company collapses, afraid of losing everything he built from nothing. That doesn't make what he did right, but it makes it human." "You're defending him." "I'm not. I'm telling you that hurting you was never actually his goal. It was just the damage he was willing to cause to reach a different one. There's a difference between malice and desperation, even when they leave the same bruises." Min-ho turned to her finally, eyes glassy in the moonlight. "Why are you still here, Zara? My mother despises you. My father manipulated my entire life around a debt he created and never told me about. My ex-fiancée is sleeping 2 floors above us, waiting for an opening. Any reasonable woman would be on a flight home by now." "I'm not most women," she said simply. "And you're not most men, even when your family makes it hard to remember that. I didn't come here for them. I came here for you. That hasn't changed just because the week got complicated." He pulled her against him then, face buried in her hair, and she felt the tremor running through his broad shoulders. A man who carried empires on his back finally allowing himself, for one private moment, to simply be held. "I won't let him use either of us again," he murmured into her hair. "Whatever happens with the contract, whatever happens with Yurin's family, you are not a bargaining chip. You never will be."